another garage time with Goody, and today what we're going to do, we're going to replace the radiator in a 2005 Nissan Altima 2.5 liter engine. So with that being said, let's get started. So the first thing you want to do before you start this project is you want to drain all the antifreeze out of the radiator. Now there's a drain plug or a plug called the petcock, whichever you prefer to call it, on the bottom of the radiator. Underneath the car, I've already drained the fluid, but right here is where the lid was for the drain. It is a plastic drain. A Phillips screwdriver takes it off on this particular model, and once you take it off, you want to have a pan on the ground catching the fluid, because antifreeze is going to be coming out. You want a bucket to drain the antifreeze in, or a pan, and then dispose of it properly, because it's very lethal to any animals or humans. So always dispose of this properly. Okay, the first thing you have to do here is remove this plastic shroud, and to do that, there's going to be plastic rivets holding it in. Now, depending on if your car's been taken apart before, is depending on what kind of tool you're going to need. A lot of you can use this miniature like little pry tool. It will just fit in underneath of the plastic like that, and you can just pull up. But with this one, this little plastic piece just screws up and then pulls on out of there, and then I can take this little plastic pry tool and pull up. I will give a link in the video description on where you can buy one of these tools. Now, I saw, since this car had been taken apart before, that it had one-time use plastic rivets. Basically, they were just pushed in there, and they're made for a one-time use. So when you pull them out, they kind of break, and then you can't use them anymore. But what I used to pull them out was these channel locks. I just grabbed them, and then I worked it out, and I did that on each one. So altogether, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4 plastic rivets holding the shroud in. And once you get those off, you just simply grab the shroud and just pull it up slightly and out, and then you just lay it to the side. And this is going to give you access to the radiator. You can see the radiator. This is what is wrong with this one. Auxiliary fan that's on the front, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug them. You can see they're plugged in right here to each fan, and I'm going to use the screwdriver to push in that plastic tab right there and just pull it out. And I'm going to do the same thing over here with this one, because there are 2 hookups. Okay, and there's the second one. Now what you're going to have to do, you can see behind here, there's these plastic pieces that hold the wiring to the auxiliary fan. You're going to want to wiggle that out, and if it needs to be pinched out, then you can do that too. But see how I just pulled that out and disconnected it from the fan? It's going to need it on this side too. Just pulled that Then it has one more in the middle. I'm going to use the pry tool here too. Let me get that down in there. And it just pulls it right on out. Looks like there's another one. A couple more here actually. Pulled that out. Pull that out. And then you set the wiring harness to the auxiliary fan out of the way. Next, I'm going to take off the cap to the radiator. And I'm going to set that there. And then you need to disconnect the hoses to the radiator. There is a hose that goes from the reservoir to the overfill to the radiator. You're going to need to take that off. So you use a pair of pliers. Now these may be rusty for you and hopefully they don't break, but if they do, you can buy some more of these at an auto shop like AutoZone. And you pull that off and lay the hose out of the way. Now, what I need to do is go underneath the car and disconnect the hoses. Well, first there's one other hose. Here's the big hose that I need to disconnect. Put that ring down there, and then I just wiggle it back and forth. And then it disconnects from there. Underneath here of these two hoses that need to come out. This hose right here is the big hose on the left, and I'm just wiggling it back and forth, as you can see. Yuck. So there is some water that may still be stuck in there that's going to come out, so be prepared for that. Now I'm going to, on the one that's to the left, the smaller one, that seems a little stuck. So what I'm going to try to do is use the pliers to kind of wiggle it out. And I'm trying to be careful not to hurt the hoses because I'm going to have to reuse these. I'm wiggling it back and forth. Looks like a lot of corrosion. It looks like it's coming out now. Broke loose. And you want to put that up because it's to the oil. It's going to leak out some. After that, over to the right, we're going to move on down the line. There's one over here that's close to the drain valve, or the petcock as we call it. This one right here, and it's the third and last one that needs to be disconnected. So I'm going to use pliers just like I've been using and push that metal retainer ring back down the hose. And I'm going to see if I can move it by hand, which I cannot. So I'm just going to use the pliers to grip it a little bit, not too hard, but just to see if, you know, I can move it around. There's a lot of, seems like there's a lot of corrosion trying to come out of this one too. I'm moving it back and forth. working on that last third line. Okay, so the first one looked like to the radiator, the second one looked like maybe transmission fluid, and this one looks like oil. And you're going to pull it off of the radiator. It's connected by a little plastic tab. Just take it off of there and then put the hose up out of the way. And then all three, if you look now, all three of the hoses are disconnected, as you can see down there too. There was 3 altogether. Okay, the next step is, if you look really close over here, you can see there's like these little ear brackets. That's what I'm going to call them, and they're holding the radiator in place. Now each of them are going to have a 10mm bolt that you want to remove. So I'm going to take my little handy dandy ratchet, and I'm going to start removing these little ear mounts. And that's what I'm going to do here, and it just lifts right off just like that. I'm going to lay that down so I know where it's at, and then I'm going to go over here to the second one, and then just remove the second one. Also, a thing I want to tell you guys is, when you order your parts, there's always a sticker. Like right here, there's a sticker on this radiator for if you want to match up the parts. You definitely want to match part numbers up when you're ordering parts, if you order them online, or when you go to buy parts, you want to tell them exactly what kind of card you have. You may even want to take the VIN number. All right, now we're going to remove that second ear mount, and as you can see, the radiator is going to want to move freely after this. And since everything's disconnected down there, I'm going to go ahead and pull it on up. Now here is where I differ from a lot of other people. A lot of other people will want you to disconnect the fan first, these auxiliary fans, but they're already unplugged, and you can go ahead and lift the whole thing out of there just like this. It lifts out, and I'm going to transplant this fan onto the new radiator in just a second. I almost forgot a very important part here, and that is on the top. When I just took off the hose by the thermostat lid, or by the lid, when I took off the hose by the lid, there would also be normally a second hose here, and it would be just like this in there like that, and you would need to take this hose off too to get the radiator out. But the reason why I'm replacing this radiator is because this hose got broke off, and that's why it's being replaced, as you can see here. So if you're replacing a radiator that just has a leak or whatever, you're going to have that extra hose up here, and you're going to want to take that hose off too when you're taking the other hoses off. This is the condenser here, and as you can see, this radiator just sits in these 2 mounts right there. They'll have like little poles, and they set down in there, and then those ear brackets just go right here, and then they bolt on. So it's pretty simple procedure. This is the new radiator, and it's the one I'm going to be putting the auxiliary fans onto. Now if you go to this side, you can see it's brand new. If you look at the bottom, you can see right here the part I was not able to show you on the old one. That is what the drain plug or the petcock looks like. And with this specific model, you can take a Phillips screwdriver and always turn it to the left until the plug comes out. Then that's how you drain the fluids from the antifreeze from your radiator. So the next step is we're going to be transplanting the auxiliary fans onto this radiator. This right here, I know most of you know, but I just want to tell to the people that don't know. This right here is your auxiliary fans, and they come on and they help cool down the temperature of your engine when it gets to a certain temperature. Well, it mounts on to the radiator, and there are two 10mm bolts here. And I have a ratchet with a 10mm socket, and I'm going to take it off of the old one. And always make sure you do not lose the bolts. You want to put those where you do not lose them. I'm going to take off the second one now. There's the second one. And as you can see down here, there are two clips that hold it in. So you just lift this up since the screws are out and just barely pull forward, and the fans will come right on out. Just like that, guys. And if your fan's really dirty, it's not needed, but you can kind of clean it off if you want to. So I'm going to lay the new radiator here. And then I'm simply going to take the fan and put it in these two little grooves here. And you push down just slightly until the screw holes line up with these screw holes at the top. Okay, once you get this mounted on, you're going to want to tighten up these 10mm bolts. And you don't have to tighten them too tight. I'd say about 5 pounds worth of pressure, not even that much. It's plastic, you don't want to break it. The other side, you do the same. And then you have your auxiliary fan back onto the radiator. And as you can see, on the bottom of the radiator, you have these two plastic poles here. And when you put this back down in, you're going to see those two holes down there. And that's what it's going to be setting on. And it sets just right down in there. And then you can let it set back just a little bit. And you're going to want your two ear brackets. Once you get your two ear brackets, you just simply put it back on just like this. And you tighten it down. I'm going to go ahead and start it by hand. And remember, not too tight. This is all plastic. Just where it's snug. There we go. Now we're going to do the same with this side. Now the next step is to hook the auxiliary fan wiring harness back up. As you can see, there is a plastic tab that goes here. Put that back into place. That's one. Plastic tab that goes there. That's two. One that goes here. That's three. One that goes here, if you can see that. That's going to be four. And plug these back in. You just take the plug in. You hear that click? That's when you know it is fully plugged in. And then you take the one on this side, and then you plug it in. Hear that click? That means it's on there. And here's the 5th plastic piece that plugs in right there from the auxiliary fan. And your auxiliary fans are plugged back in. Now, the next step is to hook all these hoses back up. Okay, so the next step I'm going to do is, remember those 3 hoses that I unhooked on the bottom? I'm going to take these channel locks and then rehook them to the radiator. I'm not going to put that on the video because the same way I took them off, I'm going to put them right back on. Next step I'm going to do is hook these top hoses back up. The first hose is this one down here that's coming up from the radiator. You kind of have to wiggle it just a little bit. I know it sounds like a song, but you wiggle that tube up there. Then you take the metal clamp, and you pull it all the way to the top. Okay, it is on there. Now the second hose, this one is from the overflow reservoir, and it goes down and connects into the radiator, and it just simply slides on. And then we get that clamp, and then we put it on. Then that is on. And then this is the hose that we didn't get to put on the first time because it was broken off onto the radiator. So it's going to connect here, and behind there's the thermostat. So you just kind of wiggle it on until it touches these 2 little kind of like ear pieces on the metal. And on the other end, you just kind of wiggle it on too. So you can use probably a 7mm or a flathead screwdriver to put those on. I'm going to be using a flathead screwdriver, guys. So you want to make sure you get it kind of tight. You don't have to over tighten it, not incredible Hawk tight, but just enough that you know it's going to clamp down and not let any antifreeze leak out. And the same up here. This is totally plastic. So now that is on there. And now we have just one more piece to add to the puzzle, and then we'll be done. Now the last part I need to do is to put this breather shroud back on. Now remember I said this had been taken apart before, and the little plastic rivets that go in these holes were tore up. Well, I'm going to put a link in the description box, but what I got were these Nissan plastic rivets that should work just fine on putting that back on. So let's see how they work. There are no screws or anything, so this just sets right on, and you push that into the breather and it just sets right on top of here. Next thing we're going to do, open this box, and there are 2 of these in each. You can see right here, make sure that the pin is pulled up, that way it's not locked into place, and then this will fit down inside these holes. So here's one. I'm going to pop it down in the hole. Fits perfect, by the way, guys. Here's 2. Then you just push down. Here the clip pops right into place. Now these look like, okay, these are the same thing. These didn't come all together, so You just put that little plastic rivet in the top. Make sure it's not pushed all the way down or it won't fit in there. Put it in there until you hear that little pop, then it's fine. Or you can even do it like this, put the plastic piece in there and then put the plastic rod through, and see, it just snaps. Now this is snapped on really good. And then after all of that is done, guys, that is how you change the radiator in this car. Now what I'm going to have to do now is check all the fluids. Be sure to check your transmission fluid now, your oil, and also refill the antifreeze. And yes, after that you're going to have to burp the radiator, because whenever you reintroduce a part like that, air gets into the system and you have to burp the air out. Anyways guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And if you like these videos, subscribe to my channel. And as always, have a good day.